So I'm delighted to be with Laura Crawford this morning, who's been introduced to me through Amber. Amber's been a real help. Laura, do you want to just let the listeners know a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. So I graduated uni in about 2011. I went straight into a corporate job, which I sort of took because everybody was taking them, and that's what sort of everyone felt like they should be doing. But actually, I didn't enjoy it, and it became very apparent quite quickly that really wasn't what I wanted to do. And I've always had a love for property. I don't really know why. I've always sort of loved the idea of doing things up and flipping them through. So I kind of just got interested in that whilst I was still at my job. And then I sourced a couple of deals and sold them on to investors. I then moved on to a joint venture where myself and a business partner bought a property in South London, and we flipped it, turned it into 4 flats, and then sold it on. So I project managed all of that. And then I sort of realised, well, development is great, flipping is brilliant, but you could end up waiting 12 months, 18 months, however long it might be, to get the money through from all these deals. So I started looking at cash flow strategies. And for me, the one that worked the best was rent to rent. So I then started a rent to rent portfolio. And I've been doing that for the last sort of maybe 3.5 years. I did work for an investor. I quit my job and worked for an investor for about a year, sort of in the middle. But I've been self-employed now for about 3 years or so. It's been an interesting and somewhat rocky road, I suppose, of rent to rent over the last few years. But I've now built up the business. I'm looking for someone to take it over, and I've now gone to sourcing and selling for investors, which is what I really love. So that's it in a nutshell.
Sure. So rent to rent has been popular at times in the recent market.
Yeah.
Is your focus on a particular geographical area in London?
Yeah, so I live in southeast London, so the majority of my portfolio is in the southeast. We do have a couple of outliers. I've got a couple in Clapham, and I've got one in, 2 in Croydon as well. So, but majority are all kind of Lewisham, Catford, New Beckenham, Charlton, East Greenwich, that kind of area. So all sort of southeast, pretty close to me.
Sure. And we've discussed how briefly you got into property, and you've looked at a few different avenues as well, apart from rent to rent, including flipping. In terms of property trading, were you buying at auction or selling at auction, or was auction part of your strategy at all?
No, we never did that actually. Although the business partner that I purchased the house with, he's done that quite a lot. So I've learnt bits and bobs as he's been telling me what he'd done. But the properties that I've sourced actually all came from almost the same agent. So it was an agent relationship. Once they bought me the first one and I managed to put that through, then obviously they knew that I was serious. They knew that I could do what I said I was going to do. And as and when things came up, they passed them over to me, and I sort of either sold them on or took them on with a joint venture partner. So agents for me has been the main way that I've built everything up.
Sure.
And rent to rent as well, actually. We have done some direct to vendor, but a large proportion of the rent to rents that we took on, or that I took on, were with agents.
And what would your sort of like suggestions be about how you build up the relationships with agents?
Yeah, so agents are a tricky one, I suppose, because especially with rent to rents, you can get a lot of rejection, but developments is a little easier because obviously you are looking to do exactly what the agent wants. You are looking to purchase the property. But again, it's just about trust. So regularly speaking with the agent, making sure that you go back, making sure that you do what you say you're going to do is a really, really big one. So, it's all well and good saying, yes, I can do this. But if the first thing they pass you reject it, or you don't call them back or whatever, you've lost your chance. So you need to be consistent. You need to be a memorable face and one that is friendly, helpful, understanding as well of what they want too. Because I think a lot of times, agents potentially feel a little bit used. You walk in, you go, what have you got? Nothing. Okay, fine, and leave. Whereas I think a couple of the deals that I've had through have been a little tricky, and I have managed to cross them over the line or get them over the line on the basis that I took into consideration the agent and what they wanted as well. And so they probably felt like they enjoyed working with me a little bit more than possibly somebody else. And I contribute a little bit of that to why they came my way and not somebody else's.
And Laura, we briefly touched on your vision going forward, because you mentioned about focusing more on the sourcing and leaving the actual handling of the rent to someone else. Is that where you see yourself going for the next few years? And what particular type of sourcing are you looking on doing?
Yeah, potentially. I'd quite like to do go back into developments, to be honest. But I think that that's probably next year. I've got quite a busy year this year. I'm getting married a little bit later on, so that's sort of taking a nice chunk out of the middle. So I'm basically sourcing and selling at the moment with the hope of going back into project managing and developments and flipping with joint venture partners next year. The ones that I'm flipping at the moment, to be honest, they range. It's usually upwards of $1 million, but we do have clients at the moment that we're working for that are looking for anything up to 30 million with planning in London. So it's a range and quite a big spectrum, but we're sort of managing to look at lots of different things at lots of different levels, which is quite exciting actually. And it's quite nice to be doing big deals.
Sure. In terms of looking at the software which you use and your systemization, I notice you've got the whiteboard behind you. What's your most effective strategies in terms of having systems in place? Is there particular software which you use?
The whiteboard for me I find really helpful because I'm quite a visual person, so being able to sort of put everything up in front of my face and cross things off and work out where I am, I find quite helpful. But online I use a couple of different things. Well, I use quite a few different things really, but Podio is the management tool that we're using at the moment for the rents, and that I had built up for me by Jeff Hancock. So that was really, really helpful actually, because Podio, if anyone knows it, is almost like a sort of a blank slate, and you can build on it how you want. So he helped us build up exactly what we needed to.
And how do you spell Podio? Sorry, Laura, how do you spell Podio?
Podio.
Podio. Podio. Okay,
Yes.
Podio.
Yeah, Podio. That's the
Okay.
one. And yeah, that's really helpful. And because it is adjustable, you can use it for so many different things. So I definitely recommend that one. I also use Trello as well. I find that really, really helpful, and that's quite a good systematic way of looking at things as well. And then, we use Xero for our accountancy software and things like that. I've got a CRM. At the moment, I'm using less annoying CRM, which is just quite basic, but it does everything I need it to do at the moment. But I do know of other people sort of using slightly larger ones, and I'm sure we'll go up to that level at some point. But those are the main ones really that I use on a day-to-day basis, and so do the people that I'm employing at the moment, and they quite like them too.
Sure. I have to admit, I've heard of Trello. Thierry Lemaire mentioned Trello. Yeah. I've never come across Podio though. You mentioned Jeff Hancock. So he's developed that particular software, or?
No. Podio is actually huge. So Podio is used in many different industries and across all the boards. But Jeff, I don't know, some of you might know Jeff through networking at Blackfriars Pin mainly. He helps there. And he's an IT guy. So he specialises in IT property. And anyone can build their own Podio. It's just that you need a lot of time and you need to try and work it all out. And you've got to work out what sort of extras you need to add on, and where you want things built. Jeff obviously knows how to do things far quicker and far better than I do, so I made the decision to essentially leverage and to get him to build up the basics, give me a few lessons to sort of work out how to do it, and I've incorporated that into my business far quicker than if I'd spent hours and hours trying to build it up and put all the different add-ins and so on. So highly recommend that.
Sure. And in terms of the best investment below £100 you've made, what would that be?
I was thinking about this, and I think probably my advice, and not it's not one particular thing. I've got like a little library in my in this room actually, just around the corner, of just books after books after books. So if I had £100, I would just go and buy a whole load of books, because I'm always reading them and I'm always getting something new out of them. And especially when you're self-employed, and it's not always roses. You know, everyone sort of says, oh, isn't it amazing, and you can do this, and isn't it fantastic? But it's not always like that. And so being able to read some of these books, see how other people have done it, see the advice that they've got, just know that other people have maybe found it difficult at times, you know, look at systems, things like that. The information that I've got from books is far outweighs any one thing that I could buy for 100 quid. So 100%, I would say, if you've got 100 quid, do that, and just take some of the recommended ones that you're seeing on all of the Facebook groups and in all the networking groups.
Sure. If there was one which you could pick.
Ooh, good one.
Or top 3.
So I recently just finished one by Tony C, who's the SEO of Zappos. That one was really good, a really easy read as well, because he's quite a funny guy, and you know, he makes it's not too complicated, but it's amazing what they managed to build up, and it's amazing kind of how they built their culture, and you know, and the kind of things that he sort of struggled through. So that was sort of more of an inspiring book, I suppose, and one like that. And then, oh blimey, what's the other one? Oh, there's one that I read. I can't think of the name off the top of my head. I have to maybe I have to let you know.
Sure.
But it was I have to say I really loved that one, and it was all about it compared to industries basically, and it was looking at how people deal with mistakes. And the fact that mistakes are an integral part of your business, and you should embrace them rather than sort of shying away from them. And it went into huge amounts of detail about what you could do. We've actually taken that on in our business, and a couple of the people that work for me, we have a Trello board that we log mistakes on, you know, and I don't jump at anybody who does make a mistake. The whole point is when a mistake is made, you go, okay, well, let's deal with it now, but also, why was the mistake made? How did we make it? What can we put in place to stop it from happening again? And that just embraces a culture of change and a culture of growth, rather than a culture of, I need to hide this because, you know, I don't want my boss to know that I've made this mistake. And that's how successful companies grow. And I found that one really interesting, actually, because it went into huge amounts of depth about it. So I'm annoyed I can't think of the name. I'll find out and I'll let you know. Sure.
I was going to say to you, the Tony C book, Zappos, is that an Audible or a physical book?
I'm sure it is on Audible. I had a physical copy of it, so I read the physical one, but I can't think why it wouldn't be on audio. I'm sure. Yeah. Okay.
So it's always interesting to see what people are reading. People are always coming up with different books. And so in terms, we've looked at the software, we've looked at the geographical areas. What's the best bit of business information you've been given? What's the best nugget of information that someone's given you?
Oh, two things spring to mind, and potentially people have heard this so many times before, but actually it's bizarre how things don't sink in until you really need them, and then you look back and think, oh, I've been told that, why didn't I do it? Firstly, leverage. I just basically thought, you know, I tried using other people, maybe used the wrong ones, or maybe rushed it. I didn't give them enough time to learn, possibly. And so I sort of was going, well, I'll just do it. It's easier. And I know how to do this, so I'll deal with it. And before you know it, you're running an entire company on 100-hour weeks, and, you know, you're killing yourself to try and get things done. And at the time I was like, yeah, but that's what I have to do, and nobody can do it as good as I can, and, you know, all these sorts of different things. And it gets to a point where you're forced to leverage because you just think, I can't do this anymore. And actually, when you let go a little bit, you find that people are so good at what they do, and maybe they need a bit of hand-holding, but I just wish I'd done it sooner. So I know that people like Rob Moore and so on go on about this all the time. I mean, he's literally written a book about it, but I wish I'd done that sooner. So that's definitely a really good piece of advice. And even if you think you can't do it, it might be a good idea to find a way to do it, because I've grown so much faster in my business since I've embraced the idea of, right, well, who can do this and who can do this, rather than when am I going to be able to do this. And the second part as well is to learn from other people's mistakes as well. Don't think that you have to do everything off the bat yourself. You know, as again, I was self-taught with Rent to Rent, and it's great that I was, and I learned through my own mistakes, and I now help other people that do that. But if I'd have got a mentor, at the time it was a cost thing, I can't afford it, etc. But, I got a mentor, I went a lot faster, and I started taking people out for coffee. I learned a lot faster. With the sourcing thing, I'm going a lot faster since I've sort of talked to a whole load of people, learned about a whole load of people, taken interest in their stories, not just about what the business we can do together, but, tell me about everything that's happened to you, good and bad. And I think if everybody shares a lot more of that, then, potentially we'll all progress a lot faster.
Sure. Laura, you mentioned about Blackfriars PIN, and so you've got experience of property networking.
Yeah.
I think you're involved in one as well. Is that right?
Yeah, I help on the desk at the PPN Knightsbridge at the moment, which is a great event. I love that one, with Matt Siddell. And I used to do lettings updates at both Blackfriars and Kensington a couple of years ago. So yeah, I've been networking for a long time.
And what bits of advice would you give to people about leveraging their network and utilizing the network and giving benefit to the network as well? What would your top tip or top tips be?
Again, a couple of things spring to mind. Number one, always follow up. The amount of times I've come back with a wad of cards and they've sort of sat there for a few days and then I've forgotten who they are, and then you kind of put them down and you think, oh, I'll deal with it later, and a couple of months pass by and you go, oh, blimey, I didn't know I had those, and nothing's happened with them. And I just don't do that anymore. I went networking last night. The first thing I'm going to do after this is to go through all my cards and to email everybody or call everybody, set up, drinks with everybody. I also write down on the cards when you're there as well. All my cards have scribbles all over them where I've written exactly what they want, what they need. So I don't have to ask again. And I also know which of the cards are more valuable than the others, and what to ask each person when I call them up. So that's quite a helpful thing to do. And the other one is to just utilize the room. It's bizarre how many people come, and I know it's really nerve-wracking, especially when there's hundreds of people there, but if you've come all the way to a networking event, speak to as many people as you can. Don't stand in the back of the room and hope someone comes to speak to you. It is nerve-wracking, but as soon as you jump into a conversation, it starts to flow, and it gets a lot easier, and you end up coming out of it with so many different contacts, and it's you can't judge anybody either as well. Sometimes you look at people and you kind of think, oh, I don't think there's a huge amount of money in this room, and then you speak to somebody and they tell you they've got millions, and you just can't assume. So always just ask loads of questions and speak to as many people as you can, really.
Laura, I just want to say huge thanks for taking time out this morning. How can people connect with you? Is it Facebook or? Yeah,
I'm on Facebook. That's usually the easiest way. I'm pretty rubbish at LinkedIn, I have to say, so probably not the best one for me, but definitely Facebook. Or if anyone has email and mobile numbers, then again, I'm contactable on there, but if not, always Facebook.
Okay, and your surname is Crawford?
Yes, that's the one. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Laura. Huge thanks for taking time out, and a huge thanks to Amber as well for recommending I do this interview as well.
Yeah, thank you, Amber, and also thank you to you, Brendan. Appreciate that.
Okay, huge thanks. Thanks, Laura.
No worries.
Bye for the moment.
Bye.